But the mistake that so many companies make is they develop this hypothesis map and they think that they're done. And that's, our YouTube video from a CRM vendor who will remain nameless. It says you can make a customer journey map in 1 hour. But that's just a hypothesis. Journey mapping done right is an opportunity to take a step back and look at the journey and what are those key moments, those critical moments that really impact customer behavior. Again, aligning back to that goal.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. Today, my special guest is Dave Seaton. Dave is the CEO and principal consultant of Seaton CX. Prior to forming Seaton CX, Dave spent over 20 years in customer-centric roles, primarily in B2B SaaS companies. He is also the founder and community manager of the Chicken Dinner Club, a new community for independent consultants. And of course, if you know Dave at all, you know his name is synonymous with journey mapping. So of course, today, that is our topic. We are going to talk about journey mapping done right. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gary. It is great to be here.
We are super excited to have you here. And this is a topic I wanted to tackle for quite some time. So our goal today is going to be very similar to our last episode, where we spent the entire episode working through some tactics and techniques on storytelling. Well, Dave is going to walk you through his DARMA method for journey mapping. And we're going to focus on one aspect of that method. We're going to focus on the A in DARMA. And if you're new to this, don't worry. We're going to walk you through it. So it's really great to have an expert like Dave share his kernels of wisdom, or maybe even, shall I say, his nuggets of wisdom with us on this. I've heard Dave speak about this before, and it's spectacular. So you don't want to miss it. So Dave, thanks so much for being on the show. Why don't we start with journey mapping in general? Let's set the stage for people. What is journey mapping done right for you, and where do some folks go wrong with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because journey mapping has a bit of a questionable reputation in our field. Mm-hmm. And what a journey map is, if we can start there, journey map is simply a visualization of the experience that a customer has with your company as they try to accomplish their goal. And that's it. It's just a visualization, right? It doesn't change anything, but it presents the insights about the customer experience in a way that helps businesses make better business decisions. In other words, where to prioritize their limited resources, time, people, and money, in order to have the biggest impact on, yes, the customer experience, but also the business performance. And so the journey mapping process that we'll go through today discovers those deep customer insights that powers that decision making, powers that transformation. Unfortunately, journey maps have about a 50% failure rate in the industry. If you go back and look at studies from the CXPA in 2016, Gartner, I think it was 2018 or 2019, TSIA on the other side of the pandemic in 2022, they all show about the same thing. And that's that half of the journey maps created aren't acted upon. They fail to drive any change in the organization. They're a waste of money. As I like to say, it's an art project. Right? If your customer journey map isn't driving change, it's just an art project. And they typically go wrong in one of three areas. The first and the biggest problem is they're mapping internal knowledge. They're mapping the opinions that exist within the company. They're not actually getting customer insight and customer feedback from customers. The second place journey maps go wrong is the project is not aligned with the company's strategic goals, with the strategic plan. The team is mapping some journey that's interesting to them or seems like low-hanging fruit or any number of reasons, but it's not aligned with what the executive team is trying to accomplish that year. And the third reason is the journey map is interesting, but it's not actionable. And that ties back to the quality of the research that's done to create the map. Ultimately, the quality of your map depends on the quality of your research. So those are the three places, the three reasons where people typically go wrong with journey mapping.
And that's interesting because that's, in my experience with it, it's in just that it's too internally focused.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not getting the client's perspective. And I've talked to you before, like, well, I'm talking to the client every day, but you know what? That's still not good enough, right? Because you want to even take them out of that comfort zone where they're used to talking to me every day and get maybe a third party, kind of a different set of eyes on it, where they can maybe open up and tell you something they might not have told you before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what's interesting about it. To me, it's been when we've attempted to do things in my organizations, it's been more of a best practice type review, a little too internally focused, or you have the client there, but you're not going through the entire journey, so to speak. So interesting stuff. So, okay, so let's get to the actual DARMA method, because today we're going to focus on the first A in DARMA, which is analyze. But you have to learn what the D is first, and then we should touch on the R and the M and the A. Which again, this could take, we could spend a whole, certainly podcast or two on the entire process, but we want to get specific on one portion of it. So if you could, the best you can, take us through the entire method for us so everybody understands where we're at and where we're coming from.
Absolutely. So when I started journey mapping, years and years ago, there was not a well-defined process for creating a journey map from the beginning to the end that's going to guarantee that you catalyze the organization for change and you're able to actually improve the customer experience and the business results. And so after doing this for many, many years, I put together DARMA as an easy to remember, easy to execute framework for creating a compelling customer journey map. DARMA, DARMA, is an acronym for the 5 steps. Step 1 is D, define the opportunity. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Why are you engaging in this journey mapping? And what is the business outcome that you're supporting with this work? Step 2 is A, analyze the current state. Let's capture everything the organization already thinks they know about customers and create a picture. We'll dive into that today. That analysis is going to set us up for step 3, which is R, for research the customer experience. There, we're actually going to go conduct research with our customers to learn about their experience, the actions they're taking, the thoughts and emotions that they're having along the way, what's most important to them, what's working well, and what may not be working well. Then, and only then, after the research, do we go to step 4, which is to map the journey. And in the mapping step, we'll analyze the research. Those customer personas will emerge. We'll create the journey maps based on what we've learned, create those visualizations. And then step 5 is to act on the insights. You've done all this work to get that clear picture of your customer experience. And now, if you've done it correctly, you've primed the organization to go make targeted improvements on the customer experience that are going to lead to those business results. I tell people to think like a journey surgeon, right? A surgeon is going to do the most minimally invasive procedure to correct the problem, not, do some holistic treatment, right? And so in the action phase, we're going to identify and prioritize what are those biggest opportunities, both for the customers and for our business. And weaving through all 5 steps, Sometimes I call it the hidden step or step 5.5. It's not a step on its own, but it's a component of all 5 steps is change management. Engaging your stakeholders, engaging your organization, creating the business case for change so that by the time you get to the end of the map, everybody is ready to go.
Right. And I think that's the key to it. I mean, there's the value right there. I know you could step 5.5 or whatever, but that's the key to keep doing it. Right. So
Yeah.
to take the insights and knowledge and act on them and then reiterate it if necessary. Because like you said, if you don't, you have a pretty art project to put in the corner. And I think the moral of the story here is this is not a 1-hour exercise, folks. This is right. So
despite what you'll see on YouTube, you cannot create a journey map in 1 hour.
Right. Nor should you use AI to do it. It is a big project, and it is something that you could take great knowledge from and great insights from your clients and really make a difference with. So that's the whole point. It's not just to go through the exercise and the map, which I think is where people get lost. It's to actually go through this entire process. As think of it as a consulting project or a more thorough best practices review to get to the insights that you need to make a tangible difference for your customers and your employees too. So great stuff.
Yeah, many times people start with the M. They start on step 4.
Yeah.
They start, okay, let's get a Miro board or let's download a template from the internet. Let's start, trying to map this out.
They can't wait to put the emojis up.
That's right. That's right. and they haven't defined the opportunity, analyze the current state, or research the customer experience. Right. And that's where they get stuck.
It's right. And this is so, it's so succinctly, it draws a parallel, I should say, really, between some of the things my other guests have been saying, where it's clearly defined the problem, right? And Sean Albertson, people process platform, right? Go through the steps, right? Define the problem. We're talking about AI with Chris Hood. It's what problem are you trying to solve? Don't just say, what can I use AI for? What is your client problem? What are you solutioning for before you do anything? But you're right. Everybody wants to draw the map because I think people do get excited sometimes for it because, hey, let's put a cute little map together. But certainly it's much more than that. So, all right. So let's say we've done the D, the define the opportunity and the problem, right? And certainly you've talked about that in other episodes, other podcasts. You mentioned to me you did that on Rick Denton's podcast. I have no problems whatsoever saying, please go to Rick's show. As Rick has been a guest here and has had me a guest on his show. I think you've done the...
I'll be recording Rick's show next week.
Oh, better go on. Okay, so you haven't done that yet. Happy to, give a hat tip to Rick. He's been on my show and I've been on his show. So absolutely tune into that one when it comes out as well. But we're to talk about the A, analyze the current state here today. So why don't you take us through the proper way to think through this section of DARMA and how we should go about it and what to look out for?
Yeah, so we've defined our problem, right? And what we hope to achieve. And that's typically something like we want to get better at acquiring customers. We want to get better at retaining customers. We want to get a bigger share of our existing customers' wallet, or we want to reduce the cost to serve customers without reducing the level of service. Typically one of those 4 opportunities. And it may be across the entire customer experience, or it may be a specific journey, for example, the service and support journey or the onboarding journey. So we've defined that. Now we're going to go into the analyze phase, and we want to learn everything we can about what the company already knows or already thinks it knows about customers. And again, keeping in mind that change management, that thread of influence weaving throughout every step of this process. So we're going to start out identifying all of our stakeholders. Stakeholders is anyone who has some sort of vested interest in the project, the outcome of the project, or the results that we're trying to achieve. And I think of stakeholders in 5 categories. The first is your executives. These are leaders who need to support the initiative. They may not be involved in the day-to-day, but they need to know that it's going on, and they need to support it within their verticals in the organization. Second type of stakeholder is your gatekeepers. These are the people who control your access to resources. Resources, again, people, time, or money. Could be someone in finance that's going to control your access to money that you need to purchase a graphic design package to create the map, or software to do this, that, or the other. It could be a leader that controls access to a key person that you need to interact with, who, controls the data, right? These are your gatekeepers. The third stakeholder is your contributors, the people who are involved in the project. Who's going to be part of that core team creating the map and then leading the change afterwards? Your fourth stakeholder is your influencers. And these are easy to overlook, but these are people that influence the perception of your work, the quality of the work that you've done, the outcomes that you are seeking to achieve. These influencers hold sway over the opinion, the perception of your work. And the fifth type of stakeholder is the people that are impacted by your work. These may be teams in the organization that need to change processes. They need to make some sort of change in order to act on the insights. So maybe it's the contact center is changing processes, procedures, scripts. Maybe it's your customer success leaders who are going to have to change the way they engage with customers. Maybe it's the onboarding team. Could be the sales team, right? Anyone who's impacted by the outcome of the results. So in the analyze phase, we start by just capturing all of those stakeholders and identifying who we need to influence as we go about this project. Then we go through stakeholder interviews and we talk with these stakeholders. What are their goals for the year? How much do they know about this project? What do they think we would need to do to be successful? Is there anyone on their team who absolutely needs to be involved? What obstacles do you think we might encounter, and how they might use this journey map in their work to accomplish their goals? These stakeholder interviews, and we also ask about, what do we need to know about customers? What do you perceive are the major steps in the journey? So the point of these stakeholder interviews is twofold. One, it's that change management. It's engaging our stakeholders, getting buy-in, identifying any objections early so that we can make a plan to address those. And secondly, it's finding out their perspective of the customer journey. And we'll use that in the research stage to develop our research instruments to go out and talk to customers. In parallel with the stakeholder interviews, we're also getting all the data that we can. And we're looking at 4 categories of data. We're looking at what is the customer behavior data. What do we already know in the organization about what customers are doing in this journey? If we're looking at a service and support journey, how many tickets are they opening? Are they, using the self-help articles? Are they engaging with the community platform? What are customers doing? What do we already know about customer behavior? Second type is operational data. How are we performing? Are we hitting our service level agreements? If we're looking at uptime, is the uptime where it needs to be? If we're shipping out product, what are our shipping rates? What's the time between when the order is submitted and when the product gets delivered? All that operational data that impacts that customer experience. The third type of data is financial. so critically important, and for some reason, really difficult for CX leaders to get many times. We've got to have that partnership with finance. I'm working on a project right now where our defined opportunity, this is a business to consumer. So the business makes the product, the business in the middle sells and distributes the product to the end consumer. So the business that makes the product, their goal with this journey map is for their distributors to make more orders and bigger orders. So it's a share of wallet opportunity, which is really, really interesting to work on in a customer experience lens, is how do we empower those dealers to recommend our product more often, because they're also carrying a competitor's line. So how do we get them to recommend our product more often and empower them to sell bigger orders? What do they need when they're out there speccing that install with a customer? So we're going to get financial data, and we're going to analyze how many dealers do we have? What are the different categories of dealers? What's the average order size? How many orders do they do a year? Right? To really understand this dealer landscape. And the fourth type of data is any sentiment data that we have. Customer experience historically has sent a lot of surveys. So let's get that survey data. Let's try and understand, again, everything the company already knows or thinks that they know about customers. And then the final step in this analyze phase is to take all of that, our stakeholder interviews, the insight from that, our data analysis, and assemble the journey hypothesis. And this is a rough cut journey map that's our company's hypothesis of what we think the customer journey is. And then in the research phase, step 3, we're going to go out and test that hypothesis. But the mistake that so many companies make is they develop this hypothesis map and they think that they're done. And that's, our YouTube video from a CRM vendor who will remain nameless that says you can make a customer journey map in 1 hour. That's what they suggest you do. You get all your stakeholders together in a room, and in 1 hour, you map out the customer journey and you're done. But that's just a hypothesis. Some of us will call it an assumptive map. It's your assumption. It's your hypothesis. Now you have to go out and do the research and test that.
And it's so much more than people think, right? Because even though people, I think, do exactly what you say, they get to that stage and they've got the assumptive map and we're done. But I don't think they do half of what you just said to do to get there in the first place. Right. So this is like, we're kidding about this. This is not an hour project, but this is a full blown thorough review of everything you're doing and how you're doing it, in order to get yourself in a better place for your employees, your clients, and even you said suppliers, right? Your vendors, your partners in business as well. Because in a lot of the business I've done, I work with vendors all the time, right? In investment management, it's not just you and the client. They've got investment managers, they've got investment consultants, they've got actuaries, they've got record keepers, they've got paying agents. The investment managers have brokers. They've got tax reclaim agents, legal firms. I mean, it never ends. The amount of vendors that you have and the amount of journeys that you have to manage. So this is, super interesting stuff. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you here, because this is such a thorough and thoughtful way of going about it, that I think hopefully if people are listening, it's changing their perspective. And that's why I wanted to have you here. So that's great stuff.
Yeah, I see so many companies that are caught up in firefighting and whack-a-mole. Right? And
Sadly,
like the game, whack-a-mole, you whack one mole, but another one just pops up over here.
Right.
And journey mapping done right is an opportunity to take a step back and look at the journey and what are those key moments, those critical moments that really impact customer behavior. Again, aligning back to that goal. Worked with one company. We started out in the define phase. They wanted to tackle customer churn. It was a B2B SaaS company. Customers were canceling their subscription more often than they ought to.
Mm-hmm.
In the analyze phase, we looked at why. We looked at all the customers who had canceled in the last 12 months and went one by one and established the primary reason that led them to cancel. And one of the top reasons, and we made this in a Pareto chart, which is, it's a tool, right, to visualize this data. One of the top reasons was mergers and acquisitions. The company that was our customer got gobbled up by a larger company that had their own tools, and they replaced them. There's limited things you can do in that scenario. Another one was loss of a key stakeholder. The person that was the champion that bought this software left, went to another organization, new person came in and switched to their favorite software. Again, there's some interventions you can run when that happens, but you also you have limited control over the leadership at your customer's company. Mm-hmm. The third reason was dissatisfaction with service and support. Okay, now we've got something that we wholly control. Let's go map that journey. And so we mapped the service and support journey. We understood what were those critical moments along the way that were so frustrating. These B2B customers would switch vendors. Mm-hmm. And we set to work over the next 12 to 18 months, improving, chipping away at all of those critical opportunities, right? Not playing whack-a-mole, but looking at the journey and the thoughts and emotions and that were leading customers to cancel and fixing those problems. And we reduced customer churn for that reason, service and support, by 66% year over year. This stuff works if you follow the methodology and understand the customer experience and go focus your efforts there.
That is interesting stuff because you just hit on those three reasons for clients leaving, and that's exactly my experience as well. And if you had asked me that, I would have said, I don't know, I got to think about it. But that's it. You hit the nail on the head. That is exactly why in places I've worked, you've lost customers over the years. It's just a function of a corporate action, so to speak. Mm-hmm. There's a change at the top. Now, a lot of times in my business, it could be a state treasurer, right? So there's politics involved. There's a new state treasurer elected, and they're going to do their thing. And it could be somebody else got promoted, moved. That's exactly right. The stakeholder changed, and they prefer the competition. But then you come down to service, and what are you not doing right? And that's the one, obviously, where you can make a difference. The other ones, there's not a whole lot you can do. You might try, but your chances of success are slim in those instances. So that is really an interesting way to look at it.
Let me tell you about another company.
I was just going to say, I was going to ask you for example. You just gave a great one, but please do. Another example is great.
Another company, another B2B company had multiple products, and the challenge they were going after, it was another share of wallet play. It's like, okay, our existing customers, they buy one product. Why aren't they buying any more? Why aren't they buying any other modules of this, integrated system? And the reason was the onboarding experience. They bought one module, and implementing that was so painful that the customers were like, okay, we got it. And it works and it's good and we like it and we're going to keep it, but we're sure not buying anything else from you guys because we can't go through that painful onboarding again. And again, it's back to that analysis, understanding the root causes, the key reasons why customers are making the decisions that they're making.
And I come from an industry where onboarding really is kind of painful because there's not much you can do about it because it's such a huge event to move huge pension plans from one provider to the other. But I did this. Now, obviously, this was just an exercise for someone teaching me how to do onboarding. I'm sorry, teaching me how to do journey mapping. And I couldn't go through the full process. It was just an exercise in me putting a journey map together. But basically, we're saying don't do it this way, but it was for a class, right?
Yeah.
And I put a journey together. It was an onboarding journey where we were trying to teach the client how to use the online tool, the online system, to process transactions online. And it had something like 27 steps in it when it should have had maybe 3 or 4. And it took them 2 or 3 weeks to get them trained and a zillion meetings and just when can you meet? And it was just painful. And so you really, once you actually go through these steps and you put it on, we're talking about how maybe the map itself isn't all important. It's the process. But then when you get the visual, you say, holy bleep, look at this, right?
Yeah.
This is a mess. And I think that's the value when you do something like an onboarding and it's actually a mess and you think it's better than it is, and then you find out, no, it's pain. There you have it, right? So now you've gone through the process and you've got the visual staring you right in the face. And I think that's where the power comes from.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is great stuff. So, all right. So that's a great review of your process, how to go about one of the 5 elements of your DARMA process. Certainly you're available. We'll talk about later where we can find you, but you've talked about this in full detail on lots of other podcast episodes. You do your own things, LinkedIn lives and everything. And we'll talk about that at the end. So I think from at this point, we're going to move over to the segments and hopefully we'll get that information from you at the end of the show. All right, we're going to hit the segments. We're going to do Does It Hold Water, which is my favorite segment of the show. This is where I ask our guest to be our resident expert witness for the day. And I read a quote, a thought leadership quote, anything I can find. The guest has no idea what I'm going to ask them, but it does fit right into their background, their expertise, so to speak. So, Dave, the defense today as a CX consultant, and the CX consultant says, when we dive into CX work, we start every engagement with a CX maturity assessment. It's not an obligatory box checking exercise. It's foundational. It gives us a solid read on where the organization stands with CX, whether it be just at the beginning or to see if they are CX fluent. So does this defense CX consultant attorney have a great idea? Does it hold water or not?
Maturity assessments are a great thing that consultants love to sell as a foot in the door. I have, and of course, right, you do the maturity assessment and then you point out all the gaps and all the ways that you can help, right? It's straight out of any consulting playbook. I have never met a CEO, CFO, COO who cares about their CX maturity on some scale. They care about business results. They care about, are we growing revenue? Are we keeping costs in check? Are we acquiring new customers? Are we retaining existing customers? And so I find a lot of these maturity assessments don't resonate with the leaders that I'm talking to. So I don't do maturity assessments. If somebody else can, sell that for $8,000 and get their foot in the door, that's great. If you're buying a maturity assessment, understand you're just paying somebody to come along and sell you more work when they're done.
Wow. Great stuff. Because I was trained by a company that shall remain nameless, so we don't protecting the guilty here. That's one of the first things you do, right? And you should do it. And because a lot of companies are not CX mature, right? And that's fine, but that's the whole point of hiring the consultant in the first place. So that's a great perspective on it because that's what I was. Oh, gee, that's exactly what you should do. But you have a different take on it, so that's interesting stuff. And if you would ask me, I would have said textbook. That's sure. That's especially in a larger organization. That's what you should do. Interesting, because you know what? When you think about it, maybe they don't care. They care about, they've got a problem they're trying to solve, or problems.
Yeah, I think that there is value in these maturity models as a roadmap for how to evolve your customer experience management program. I'm not saying there's no value, but yeah, consultants that come in, oh yeah, first thing we'll do is a maturity assessment, and we'll identify all the places where we can sell you more work.
Great stuff. Hey, that's the point of this segment. It's to come up with a little bit of a difference of opinion and something that folks have not thought of. So perfect stuff. Okay, let's move over to chip shots. Chip shots are my short form questions, a little more fun yet still professional questions that delves into our guest's background and history, and maybe gives us some more, I'm going to say it again, nuggets of advice today, Dave. So we try to go to 3 or 4. Let's see what we can do here. I got to stick with the book one. It's going over very well. We've got a great book list going. What is one book that has significantly influenced you personally, professionally, and how did it impact you?
All of the above. It's called Primal Leadership, and it is by Daniel Goleman and a few other collaborating authors, focused on emotional intelligence in leadership. And I first encountered these ideas in a Harvard Business Review article that changed my life, called Leadership That Gets Results by Goleman and I think his collaborator, Boyatzis. Anyway, it outlined, I encountered it when I was a new manager leading teams for the first time. It outlined that there were actually 6 different leadership styles, and presented the idea that a leader should use them like a golfer choosing golf clubs for appropriate for the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And this blew my mind because I had never thought about leadership styles. I mean, my background was a computer programmer, right? I have a computer science degree. I never thought about leadership styles. And as I read the article and looked at my own leadership style, it was one of the 6, and it was the worst one on your company culture, had the worst effect on your employees. And I identified that, well, that's probably the reason why I'm really struggling as a new manager leading my first team. I began to learn and practice the other styles. My team morale turned around. We became a very high-performing team in the organization. I went from manager to vice manager to director to vice president in under 4 years. This idea of emotional intelligence and leadership styles completely transformed my career and overflowed into my personal life, into my relationships, and how I engage with loved ones, with compassion and emotional intelligence. So highly recommended, Primal Leadership.
Wow. That is a great one. So I'm a golf nut, and I try to stay away from golf too much on this podcast. But since you went there, so Dave was trying to get out of a bunker with a 4-iron, basically, is what was going on. And the that I've never heard the analogy to golf in leadership styles. Now luckily I was taught at an early age, and one of the first things when I went to business school is that a good leader adapts their style to the situation. You don't try to ever force your style on the situation. But it's saying something very similar, but I've never thought of having six different clubs in your bag and pulling them out as you need them. And being a golf crazy dude, that is great stuff. So that is going right to the top of my list. I've got about 15 to 20 great ones from my guests, but really, really interesting one. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this is, it's a similar question. Is there a particular experience of failure early in your career that taught you a valuable lesson that you still use today?
For we'll call it the first decade of my career, I was a computer programmer. And I just kind of kept my head down, didn't rock the boat, didn't take any risks. And what happened is other people dictated my job, my career trajectory. They were the authors of my career story, not me. And one day, I don't know why, I took a risk. Our leader asked us for ideas for how to make the support process better. Our entire support team had quit, and so they started rotating developers through the customer technical support role, and we all hated it. And so he asked us, well, okay, give me some ideas to make it better. And I wrote a manifesto. And all of my peers had presented ideas. Well, if account management just did this, it would be better. If product operations just did this, it would be better. I wrote a manifesto, took a risk, put myself out there, faced criticism, but I outlined 3 or 4 things that we could do, not depending on any other team or department. And when they created a new support team and needed a manager of it, they offered me the job.
Wow.
And that idea of taking a risk and putting yourself out there when you have an idea, when you have one of those really good ideas that it makes you nervous, taking the risk, putting yourself out there, completely transformed my career. And I did it over and over and over again in my corporate career. Ultimately leading the project that won us a North American Customer Centricity Award in 2020. That project started in early 2019. And then all the way through deciding to quit my job and become an independent consultant. And I've been doing that 4 years now. And as you alluded to, I've started Chicken Dinner Club to help other independent consultants. But that's the experience. Take a risk, put yourself out there, face the criticism.
That's a great piece of advice, and it's a great lesson. I definitely have felt that and been there, especially if you get in an environment where there's, and a lot of people are feeling this lately over the past few years, kind of that environment where there's layoffs and job cuts, and you don't want to take a risk. You just keep your head down, keep your pencil moving. I got to stay under the radar here. But what happened? There's fine. It's like a golf analogy. It's like laying up on a par 5. And so you're playing it safe. But what might happen, like we saw Rory McIlroy on the Masters do, he played it safe on 13. He laid up, and he chunked a wedge into the creek. So it could happen, right? So that is really interesting stuff. I've felt that pressure just to kind of lay low, but you do, if you want to keep moving and keep things progressing, you do have to take a few risks and get yourself out there. So great lesson for us all. So speaking, I'm going to change the order of the question since you alluded to Chicken Dinner Club and independent consulting. I'm going to go with the advice question where I put an adjective in, a different type of advice for each guest. What is the best piece of independent consulting advice you have ever received, and how has that shaped your approach?
Specialize. And it took me a long time to get there, but oh my gosh, did things change when I stopped trying to be the general practitioner and became a specialist or a surgeon, to use that medical analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said it in the intro, Dave Seaton's synonymous with customer journey mapping. That didn't happen by accident. That was an intentional choice I made a couple years ago to specialize in customer journey mapping. Have I done change management? Of course. Have I done surveys? Yeah. I've done it all, because being a corporate leader teaches you, it rewards you for being a jack of all trades. You can lead a project, you can implement software, you can hire, you can fire, you can do performance management, all of the things, right? But when you become an independent consultant, people don't want to hire a generalist if they're going to go through the process of hiring a consultant. They want the guy, the person, the best in the world to do this thing. And so as an independent consultant, you've got to find your lane and you've got to stay in it. And when I stopped trying to create content and be a thought leader around leadership and quantitative analysis and surveys and change management and all the stuff, I got such great clarity. And it was like a weight was lifted. And, now I don't talk at a conference unless it's about journey mapping. I don't go on a podcast unless it's about journey mapping. I don't write a blog unless it's about journey mapping. And it's so freeing to have that clarity. And it's also transformed my business. So that's number one advice for independent consulting is specialize. Face the fear, right? Because that's the fear. Oh my gosh. If I'm the journey mapping guy, I might miss out on this other project. You got to face that fear and you got to specialize, because then you'll attract the kind of work that you really want to do. And I chose journey mapping because I love leading these big projects. I love interviewing customers, doing the research. I love the output. I love leading those action workshops to identify, what are we going to do based on this? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I chose what I chose. And it has made all the difference. Yep. Second piece of advice for independent consultants, learn how to sell. Half of your job is finding the work. You have to get just as good at finding the work as you are at doing the work.
That's amazing stuff. Because absolutely, I think people think it's almost like you're hedging, right? I don't want to specialize because it's going to be too narrow and I'm going to miss out on a whole bunch of stuff. So if I go over here, I'm going to miss this stuff. Well, if I go over here, I'm going to miss this stuff. And otherwise, you're just like, I think you've said this before, you're down at your computer downstairs and pitching on the platforms, putting your best pitch on the, I won't use the name of the platform or platforms, but I do a lot of that too, which is all right. That looks interesting out there. And it is a difficult way to do it. And that is very enlightening. It's something I'm learning as well. And I think it's a valuable piece of advice for anybody who's out there doing it now and is struggling, or if you're thinking of doing it, that is a really great way to start your journey off as a consultant, to think of it correctly and not waste time kind of literally treading water or spinning your wheels. So great piece of advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Take a risk. Pick something. Make an offer. Go find one client. If you don't find one client, then go back and pick something else, right? But you got to pick something and you got to take that risk and you've got to take that shot.
Yeah. Oh, great stuff. Great stuff for people. Last one. If you could spend the day shadowing a leader professional in any industry for a day, who would it be and what would you hope to learn?
Can I go back in time?
Yeah, sure. We've had people do that.
All right. This is going to come way out of left field. Bill Bryson.
Okay.
He is a nonfiction author. He's written a lot of travel books. I'm a huge fan of his work. I would shadow him and just decode his writing process. I love travel. I love hiking, exploring national parks. I have some ambition out there at some point in the future to write about my adventures. And he's a huge writing somebody that I admire. So,
and wait, he's not writing about business. He's writing about travel and hiking.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, his best book is called A Walk in the Woods. It's about him and a friend hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, yeah. I had a coworker do that a few years ago. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting stuff. That is way out of left field. Not at all what I was expecting, but that's a really cool one. Good for you. Awesome. Great job, Dave. It has been a thrill to have you on the show. This episode is just full of great advice for people, and that's the goal of the show, really. It's your customer, your success for a reason. We're here to help people learn things that I struggle to learn and put it succinctly in 30 to 40-minute episodes for them. So I think you've done that marvelously. Journey mapping is a topic that's talked about often, and it's probably not talked about correctly enough. So I think you've set the record straight here, and some other great pieces of advice about consulting, etc. So please do let everybody know where they could reach you, because you have a lot going on between your consulting, your chicken dinner club. Let everybody know where they can reach you.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. That's my social media home. So find me at Dave Seaton on LinkedIn. My consulting website is seatoncx.com. That's my last name, SEATONCX.com. And for independent consultants that are listening, go to chickendinnerclub.com. Get my free weekly nuggets email. Every Friday, I'll send you 5 tactical sales and marketing tips that's going to help you find clients.
It is great. I love it because it is just that, put into little segments and nuggets, and that's something I like to read and digest, but it's the way I try to do things as well. So awesome. So Dave Seaton, great guest. We are so thrilled you were here today. Thanks for joining us. For everyone else out there, we will be back soon with more CX leaders, some customer success leaders. And word is, there's a rumor I might even do a solo episode, Dave. So I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see.
Looking forward to that.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.